Automation Guild show when we all get together to help each other in creating automation awesomeness. In today's show, we're going to be taking a tour around the world of all the cool open source frameworks I could find. So the top ones I could find. We're going to take a quick look at each one of them, pros and cons of each. So that's what the show is going to be about today. I just want to give folks a few minutes to join, get in the chat, start leaving your any questions you might have. And then we'll get started in a few seconds. And like I said, today's show is going to be all about automation frameworks. So if you have a particular automation framework that you like using, let me know in the chat, send me an email. I'm always looking for new tools that I can review and do shows on. Give me 1 second. Okay. So like I said, if you're in YouTube right now, just leave something in the chat. Let me know what you're thinking. And then we'll get started in a few minutes. Actually, let's just get into it right now. Hey, welcome to the Automation Guild, where we get together to help each other create automation awesomeness. I'm your host, Joe, from Colantonio.com, testtalks.com, and Guild Conferences, a blog, podcast, and online conference dedicated to helping you succeed with creating automation awesomeness. In today's show, we're going to be taking a quick tour around the top open source frameworks I could find to help you with your test automation efforts. Most of you that have been following me for a while know my biggest pet peeve is that people tend to build before they actually look if there's actually a solution out there that can help them with their efforts. So hopefully some of these frameworks will give you an idea of what is out there and if there's anything you can leverage to help with your automation efforts. So like I said, the biggest thing, like I said, is before you write one line of code, you always want to see what's available out there, because the more code you write, the more you need to maintain, and the harder it is going to keep your framework manageable over time. So I'm a big believer in looking to see if there's a tool out there already that can help me, and if there is, how can I leverage it and incorporate it, rather than me starting from scratch creating a framework. So I'm just going to share my screen. I'm going to go over really quick some of the options that I think are really great for automation. So a lot of times people I think get confused with frameworks, and it means different things to different teams. But in general, when I think of an automation framework, I think of it as a common set of tools, guidelines, and principles for your test. So everyone on your team's on the same page. Everyone is driving for the same thing. This is really critical as if you have a larger team and you're responsible for automation or setting up the initial framework, that you have these principles in place before you roll it out to your other teams. Because if you don't, all these teams are going to be doing their own thing. So you want to make sure at a high level, setting, these are the guidelines, here are our page objects, this is how the framework is split up, and then roll it out to your team once you have those guidelines in place. I think that'll really help you get started being successful with automation rather than just saying everyone go at it. Another common question I get asked all the time is, what automation framework should I use? And the question really is, it depends. It depends on your team, on the technical level of each member, what you're trying to achieve, what technology stack you're using. A lot of these things all come into play when choosing a framework. So let's take a look at some of the top frameworks I could find and go over the pros and cons of each and see if there's any that meets your team's needs. And like I said, this is individually based on what you need. So what's good for me may not be good for you, or your team may have other needs that I don't have. So make sure as we're going over, there is not one best framework. There's only frameworks and tools that can help you create better automation. And here are some options that you can take a look at. So the first one is Serenity. This used to be called the Serenity. I don't know if anyone's used this, but I've been using this for a while. And what's really awesome about Serenity, it acts like a wrapper on top of Selenium. It also sits on top of JBehave and Cucumber. So if you're doing BDD, it has all these extra functionality that's wrapped so that rather than having boilerplate code that you normally have to write when you're starting off from scratch with these frameworks, it has a wrapper on top of it that creates some high-level methods and functions you can utilize to help you get up to speed really quickly with creating an automation framework. For example, a lot of times when you're dealing with multiple browsers, if you're starting from scratch, you need to create logic to say if you're Firefox, use this driver, if you're Chrome, use this, if you're Phantom.js, use that. With Serenity, it takes care of all those things where you just have a serenities.xml file or serenities.properties file. And in that properties file, you just specify WebDriver equals Chrome or Firefox. And then when you run your tests, it reads that file and it takes care of all the complexity of handling browsers behind the scenes without you writing one piece of code. So it has a lot of things out of the box that you can get started quickly with automation. With a lot of functionality that's already created for you. Also, it integrates seamlessly with Gradle and Maven, so you can run your tests from the command line using a lot of built-in functions that Serenity has for you at the command line. So it really integrates really nicely with any CI tool you have. This is a tool I use, like I said. They also have a JS version, so Serenity.js. And what's really awesome about Serenity is the reporting. So if you have a lot of needs for reporting, this really out of the box, when you look at these reports, they're kind of mind-blowing how awesome they are. So you definitely want to check that out if reporting is important to you. So if your team uses Java, uses JavaScript, and you don't want to start from scratch, but you still want to leverage the same IDEs and languages as your developers, Serenity is definitely one of the top tools I would take a look at first. Another framework you might be interested in if you're into Python is Robot Framework. And Robot Framework is really a mature solution. It's been around for a while, and it uses what a lot of testers may have been used to before, which is keyword-driven. So it uses like a keyword-driven approach to make tests readable and easy to maintain and create. It also has test libraries that you can use other than Selenium. So they have ones for FTP, Android. So if you're testing more than just a browser, Robot Framework's a good choice because you can integrate all these other plugins and do more of an end-to-end type workflow using not just a browser, but also other technologies all within one test script. And like I said, it really does a lot of things behind the scenes where it has keywords for you. So you can pull in the Selenium library and it automatically has all the keywords defined for you. So you don't have to write from scratch logic for clicking and interacting with elements. It has them baked into the framework itself. So it's really a great tool for testers who are already familiar with vendor-based, keyword-driven approach to testing. So if that's your company or your team, this might be a tool that might be a good fit for you. Another one is Redwood HQ. I don't hear much about this from many teams, but I think it's really different from the other ones because it offers like a website where your teams can all log into a central place to be able to view their tests, work together, see what's happening, run your tests from a centralized location. So if you're used to using a tool like UFT or QTP and integrating with the LM, Redwood HQ actually has that functionality where it has allows you to have clients that you can define within it where you could run these scripts against this machine, these scripts against another. It also has a table view where you can do data-driven development in it, keyword-driven. It's built on top of Java and Groovy. So you can use, I believe you can write your test in Python, C#. So I think it's a great solution that a lot of people don't know about and a lot of people don't use. But I think it's really neat. And like I said, what's different about it from the other tools is it has a built-in IDE that allows you really to maintain and modify your test cases and actions, as well as run them against different machines all within one location. So it's a great solution if you're looking for a complete test end-to-end solution that needs something like something that helps you with your test management. Especially if you have a lot of teams, they call login, like I said, use the same solution. Another one is that's been around kind of for a while. It's open source, but they also have a pro solution, is Sahi. And I've heard a lot of good things about this. The customers that use this really rave about it. I actually interviewed the creator of Sahi in Test Talks if you want to check that out, head on over to automationguild.com/show. And in the show notes for this episode, I'll have links to all the podcast interviews. I've interviewed a lot of the people that actually developed a lot of these tools. For example, Serenity, I've interviewed John Smart. Sai, I've interviewed, for some reason, and the name is slipping me, but the creator of this. So it's a really neat solution. It really was developed for web testing. So if you're doing only web testing, this might be a good thing. Also, if you liked Selenium IDE, Sai has a built-in recorder into it where it allows you to record your test scripts against multiple browsers and then modify the test. And it really acts like helps guide you through recording and capturing the information you need to interact with your application. And you can either use it in the controller to play back your scripts, or you can code your scripts or the functionality pretty easily within it as well. So like I said, I haven't used this myself, but I've heard a lot of good things about it. And like I said, I've interviewed the creator of it, and the Sahi Pro has a lot of features in it that allows you to create a framework that has a lot of built-in functionality where you don't have to start from scratch. And if you're doing web-based automation and you have people that aren't as technical or hardcore developers, this is a solution you might want to take a look at. So another tool, and this tool is pretty cool if you're into UI automation. So if you have a lot of front-end developers that really are, the way your application looks is really important to them, whether it looks on a big screen, a small screen, a telephone, all these different devices. UX-based testing, Galen is perfect. It's a spec-based, so it allows you to create your test in what they call a spec, and it really is just a text file, and allows you to specify your application's layout, what the elements should look like, how big they should be, where they're located, and then verify that when your tests run that these elements are in the right place, the right location. Has built-in reports for screenshots and visual image comparison, and has a cool heat map feature that shows you visually where certain areas may be of concern. And as I said, tests can be written in a simple text file, so you could pass it on among your team and they can write these tests, and then you can incorporate them into your framework. The syntax is, I believe it's JavaScript or Java. You can use either one for Galen. Once again, I interviewed the creator of Galen, Ivan, and I'll have that in the show notes. So you want to check that out. Really a unique solution for UX-based testing. If your team's interested in actually testing how your application is going to appear on different devices, definitely want to check this out. This isn't really visual validation testing. It's more of layout-based testing. So if something is expected to be at a certain layout, at a certain pixel, this is a great solution to try out and check out. Now Gauge, if you've heard of Selenium, Selenium came out of ThoughtWorks. There's a lot of tools that came out of ThoughtWorks. And one of the newest ones, I believe they used to have something called Twist that they no longer support, that's no longer developed. This is the newest one I believe that ThoughtWorks have worked on, and that's Gauge. And Gauge is really cool if you have to run your test and your framework against Windows, Macs, or Linux. And it leverages a syntax that's kind of like TDD or BDD. So you have these living executable documentation tests you can write. So you can write in a really English-like syntax and then run your test, and behind the scenes hide the complexity from your users. So the tests are written in things called specs, and you can use languages like Java, Ruby, C# within your existing developers' IDEs, and you can use Eclipse and Visual Studio. They also have a lot of support that you can extend using what they call plugins. So if you go to the Gauge website, check out the plugins. There's a lot of different runners you can use. They have Ruby runners, C# runners, Java runners, whatever thing. So if anyone's contributing to this project, they could create a plugin. You could pull down that plugin and create it yourself. So like I said, it's pretty new and it's pretty cutting edge. Well, it's been around for a year or so. So if that's something that you're into, newer technology, like I said, the folks from ThoughtWorks are thought leaders. That's probably why they named it ThoughtWorks in this space. So it's a pretty neat, unique tool that I've heard a lot of good things about. And we actually had the creator, or one of the main developers for Gauge, within our Automation Guild 2017 conference, which was really awesome. So of course, whenever you're live streaming, here's a pro tip. Always mute your phone. I have a phone going, so I'm going to wait till the phone is done ringing before we get started with the other frameworks. And like I said, I'm not promoting one framework over the other. It really depends on your team and your team's needs, or what you need in order to be successful with automation. And what successful, or what I need, is different than probably what you need or what your team needs. So always remember that. All right, so as I said, Gauge is a great option, especially if you're into newer technology. You want to check it out. Definitely a cool tool. So far we've really looked at tools that help you with browser-based automation. But you have other tools like Robot Framework that can allow you to test other things as well. It also, Robot Framework does have an add-in for API testing. But if you're doing just API testing and you already use Cucumber, here's a newer tool that I recently discovered, and I'm kind of blown away by this. This is Karate DSL. It's by Intuit. I think they open sourced this recently. And it allows you to create API tests using BDD without writing any code. Right? I know, well, I always hear warning bells when I hear someone say no code. But it really does help you with your testing efforts if you have a team and they just have some fairly straightforward APIs you want to get up and running really quickly using BDD to test these and not have to write much code. You can write code if you need to, but out of the box, here's an example I have on YouTube. I'll have a link to this. I didn't write any code, and I was able to interact with a REST API in my Jenkins server just by using the syntax that Karate DSL gives you out of the box. So I was able to do my given when thens. I was able to navigate to an API post and do a get and verify that the object returned to me was correct, all using the built-in functionality from Karate DSL without writing a line of code. So like I said, it was really easy to get started with. Integrates with, because it uses Java behind the scenes, it integrates with all your developers' IDEs. And it leverages Cucumber also, so you can write your API test using an English-like syntax. And really, I haven't dived into it really in depth, so I haven't done really complex API testing, but the API testing I did use it for, I didn't have to write one line of code. It's crazy. And like I said, it leverages Cucumber JVM, so you get all the awesomeness of Cucumber, all the functionality you're used to out of the box. And it all depends on your company. A lot of companies also like using a tool like, not a tool, it's a library, Rest Assured, which is also another cool option when you're using Java-based automation. But if you have a team that want to get up to speed really quickly, they have some high-level API tests, and they want to use BDD with their API tests, I think this is an awesome option to check out. Karate DSL, really pretty cool technology, open source, and the creator Peter Thomas, I believe, he's very approachable on Twitter. So if you have any questions, I would definitely check that out. So if you're doing API testing, if your team's doing API testing, this is one tool I definitely would have them check out to see if it's something that would fit into what your team needs. Now here's an option that's so new to me, I don't even know how to pronounce it. I think it's called Catalan Studio, and this isn't really open source. It's free to use, but they don't provide the code behind the scenes, but it is free. So it's a hybrid solution. And what's cool about this is that it's really like what they kind of pitch it as a complete software testing solution that you may be used to with a vendor tool like, say, QTP or whatever other tools out there, Ranorex. But it's free. It's a free solution. So it has a built-in spy on it. It has object spies. All the things you're familiar with these vendor-based tools is available to you within this Catalan tool. So you have a recorder, you have object repositories. You can do keyword-driven approach. It has checkpoints built into it. Like I said, if you've ever used a tool like QTP, you'd be very comfortable within this particular environment. And what this does is it uses Selenium and Appium behind the scenes. So it uses the libraries, but it hides all that complexity from you. So you don't need to use a developer's IDE. You use this IDE, which is really geared towards exactly what it needs to be for testing. It has all these built-in functionality for you. There's data tables, data-driven tables. Really neat. I haven't taken a deep dive into this yet. I will be creating a video on this shortly on how to get started with it. But I think it's a great option for teams that don't necessarily need to or want to integrate with the developer's tools per se, but they want to have a solution that's open, that's free, that gives them all the functionality they may have from a vendor, but like I said, it's free. So the only concern I have with this is it's not fully open source, so I just don't know. I don't know enough about this solution yet, but I did have someone approach me within the Automation Guild Slack channel asking me to check it out. So I did a high-level look at it, and it seems like a pretty cool solution. It allows you to test things, very easily without having to really get codey with it or to do really high-tech or really in-depth developer functionality. And the IDE is really easy to get started. You just do a setup and you have everything available to you. And you get up to speed pretty quickly with Java, testing Appium and Selenium really quickly. And like I said, if your team is already used to a vendor-based solution, this would be something that would definitely help them pretty quickly without having them have really hardcore programming skills. This might be a solution you want to check out. Another question I get asked a lot is, okay, I'm not testing a website, I'm not testing an API, I'm testing a thick client application like a WPF application or a WinForm application. Are there any open source solutions I can use? And the answer is yes. The one I'm familiar with, and the one I know I have a team working on that uses this pretty successfully, is the White framework. And the White framework allows you to interact with Windows-based applications, WPF applications. So if your team is a C shop, Microsoft shop, and you have a lot of thick client applications you need to automate, White framework is probably something you should check out. It is C sharp based, and the library allows you to start an executable, do assertions on it, check to make sure it's in the right place, right location. You can spy on it. So if you have any sort of applications other than a browser that need automation, this is one of the few solutions I'm aware of. You could use Sakuli, which is I don't know why I didn't have this in here, but Sakuli is another framework. It does more image-based, where White is actually, it goes at the API level. It knows about the presence of certain locations. So it's a little more, reliable, or I've heard pros and cons for both using an image-based versus this approach. But this is something that a lot of companies, a lot of teams are using to automate their non-browser applications. Also because it's written in C#, if you're doing BDD and you use something like SpecFlow, because SpecFlow doesn't care what you use under the covers to actually automate make your BDD executable, you can use White behind the scenes, so you can create BDD for thick client applications and have White under the covers doing the actual automation and navigation for you of your say WPF application. And the last one, if your company uses JavaScript or they're mainly UI-based automation engineers, Nemo.js was created by the folks at PayPal, acts like a wraparound type of Selenium WebDriver, has a lot of built-in functionality. So if you're using JavaScript, you could just use the same exact JavaScript language and use the Selenium syntax. So if you know Selenium, the API is pretty similar between all these other language bindings. So if you know it in Java, the syntax is pretty similar in JavaScript. But if you have mainly JavaScript developers doing your automation and they're doing a lot of front-end automation, or they just hardcore love JavaScript, Nemo.js is a great option for them. Like I said, Serenity also has a JavaScript implementation, Serenity.js, which I prefer, but it depends on your team. Both are really solid solutions. Nemo is agnostic for what test runner you use, so it really is reusable depending on what you need, and really easy to configure and set up. So if you're using JavaScript and you want to do test automation, Nemo.js is a great solution. All right, so those are just some of the top ones I could find for open source solutions or semi-open source solutions to help you with test automation frameworks. A lot of these folks actually joined me on the first Automation Guild conference. If you're not familiar with Automation Guild, it's the first ever online conference dedicated 100% to helping you succeed with test automation awesomeness. Last year, we had the creator of Serenity, John Smart, join us. We also had Pekka Clark, who's the creator of Robot Framework. We had one of the lead developers for the Gauge framework join us. So that's still available. So if you head on over to guildconferences.com, you can still purchase that, or you can join us this year for the second annual Automation Guild Conference. It's all online. We're going to have some of the top automation thought leaders join us to share a tip, tool, technique, or best practice to help accelerate your automation efforts in 2018. So my goal is you walk away with a tip, tool, or technique that's really going to help you succeed with your automation efforts. So you definitely want to check that out. Head on over to automationguild.com, sign up now. And if you haven't signed up for the first Automation Guild, when you sign up for Automation Guild, the second annual, you're going to get a special offer when you check out and you're about to pay, where you get a super discounted price for the first conference. So you get over 40 videos of automation awesomeness that's really going to help you. Even if you pick up one tip, tool, or technique, I think it's really going to help you succeed with your automation efforts in 2018. So that's it for the quick tour around the world of all the open source automation frameworks I could find, the top ones. There are a lot of other ones out there. Really, my main point was, before you write a line of code, make sure there's not something out there that you can leverage already. There's nothing worse than that just drives me nuts when I see a team that's been developing their own solution from scratch for 6 months, and you look at it and you're like, this is garbage. Why did you just pull down this library to do this? It's a lot of times people's egos or pride get in the way and they always think they can build something better. But me, I just want to help the business. That's what our job is. If you want to stay employed, you want to be able to help your business quickly, efficiently, and as cost effective as possible. So starting from scratch is not always the best solution. So always make sure you're looking out for what's the best solution out there, and for your team and also for your company and you as well, that you're able to get up to speed quickly. So hopefully this helped. And like I said, if you want to learn more about automation, or you really want to accelerate your automation efforts, make sure to check out Automation Guild at automationguild.com. Sign up for the 2018 conference. It's going to happen January 8th to the 10th, and it's going to be awesome. Hope to see you there. That's it. As always, test everything, keep the good, and see you next time. Cheers.